We are showing you some images of the blaze currently alight in South Turramurra. We believe this is near Canoon Road. We've been told by the RFS that if you are in that vicinity, it is too late to leave and you need to seek shelter where you are. We also understand that there is now an emergency warning blaze at North Turramurra. We are just trying to get some more information about that particular fire. I'll just see whether I can do it for you now. We can actually go to Matt Doran at RFS headquarters in Sydney. Matt, can you bring us up to date with what's now happening in Sydney?
Yeah, this emergency warning issued just after the Rural Fire Service held their last media update. It just goes to show how quickly the conditions are changing. We understand that this is a fast-moving grass fire in South Turramurra around Canoon Road. I'll spell that out, C-A-N-O-O-N Road in South Turramurra. There are properties under threat, and as you saw from the pictures from the ABC's helicopter just then, it is something that is causing great concern to firefighters there. Until now, there have been a few fires popping up within the Sydney area, but they've been brought under control pretty quickly. This is the first one that has really flared up, and it's gone from not existing to emergency level incredibly quickly this afternoon. So there are many resources being diverted to ensure that this fire is brought under control as quickly as possible, and a lot of anxious faces watching the monitors behind us here at RFS headquarters as they get their own helicopter vision coming in, showing the extent of that blaze there. Yeah, and these live pictures that we're seeing at the moment, Matt, it's showing really not just a grass fire, it's certainly bushland on fire there, but this is in the leafy north shore of Sydney, and you know, there's certainly a lot of residents living in that area. As we can see from these pictures we're seeing at the moment, it's in this bush area, but certainly homes extremely close by and some right in the firing line. That's right, and that's why the entire Greater Sydney region was placed under a catastrophic fire danger warning today. There were concerns that this could happen. Sydney is of course surrounded by vegetation, and it does move into very densely populated areas such as Turramurra, where we're seeing this fire now. That was also the message earlier on today from the Rural Fire Service, that just because there had been no major fires up until now, it wasn't an issue or wasn't a case of people being complacent that it wouldn't happen, because those wind conditions are picking up. They're fanning flames not only now in the Sydney metropolitan area, but more broadly up in the Hunter region as well. That's a cause for concern for firefighters. There's been a few fires through there throughout the afternoon, but they haven't really taken off, apart from one where there was an emergency warning issued that's now been downgraded. But as these winds come through the Sydney metropolitan area and further north through the Hunter, there is cause for concern. That's certainly the message issued a short time ago by the New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons.
Matt, as we talk to you, we've just seen one of the planes working for the RFS pass over that fire and drop some retardant. Can you give us an idea, if you know, of the resources on standby today in the Sydney Basin? Because this is what Shane Fitzsimmons feared, isn't it? That this situation in some areas may get out of control quite quickly in the late afternoon.
I don't have those details to hand just at the moment. I will endeavour to bring you them in the next hour or so when we cross back here to RFS headquarters. But we do know that there were a number of firefighting assets, to use the technical jargon, put on standby to protect the Greater Sydney area, just because of the concern there, that catastrophic fire danger. We know that water bombers were brought in immediately as this South Turramurra fire was issued an emergency. So the resources are there, and this is certainly what, as you mentioned, what fire services were concerned about, that this fire would not only be impacting the communities up in northern New South Wales who have really copped it over the last few days, but then it would start to come down south, down to the Sydney region as well. So I'll endeavour to get that information for you about what assets are available in the Sydney region and what are being deployed to tackle this fire.
Yeah, Matt, we're seeing live pictures at the moment, and it's quite incredible, the air appliance using this fire retardant, and we can see the blazes coming right up to basically the doorsteps of some of these homes. But at this point, it looks to be working. The house still there intact that we were looking at, and smoke and burnt bushland very close by. But we know this fire, as you said, it's flared up just right after the RFS gave that latest update, but still a lot of important information in that update, particularly about winds and how they're set to change and how dangerous that could be.
Yeah, the winds are the real kicker here. As they start to get stronger, there is a concern that they will not only fan those flames that are already burning across the state, but also will affect the broader fire activity, change the fire's direction, push it into new areas that it hasn't yet burnt. So there is a significant concern as to how the weather will impact those fires over the next few hours, well into the late hours of today and the early hours of tomorrow. There is a southerly change due to come through, which could further impact those fires as well. Certainly Shane Fitzsimmons, the Rural Fire Service Commissioner, was very concerned about that when he addressed the media less than an hour ago.
And so, Matt, it does sound as though those winds are the primary concern of authorities this afternoon, because with the southerly bluster will come cooler conditions in its wake. We've already learned that in southern parts of the state, the humidity has actually increased. Normally, those are things that might help firefighters to control a situation like this. But today, given the incredibly dry conditions, the ongoing drought, it seems as though despite the cooler conditions and the higher humidity, these fires will still be difficult to put out.
Dry, hot and windy. It really is the terrible trio of factors that are leading to this situation right across the state and now gripping Sydney as well. So there are a lot of people watching to see how this change in weather conditions will affect these fires, and particularly making sure that no one is complacent as we move into the evening. People thinking that as it gets dark, as it gets a bit cooler, that maybe the fire activity will die down. That is certainly not the message we're getting from the Rural Fire Service, urging people right across much of New South Wales to remain vigilant and to ensure that they are aware of the changing conditions around them.
We understand that New South Wales has just received or has just had another fire upgraded to emergency level. We will find some details out about that as soon as possible. While we do, Matt, I'm just going to make an observation that the fire retardant being used here at South Turramurra in the vicinity of Canoon Road, it appears to be red, and it does appear as though some of it is spreading over the homes, cars, horse sheds or horse floats nearby. I think I might be putting you on the spot here, but I am interested in finding out in what circumstances fire retardant is used as opposed to water.
You are putting me on the spot, I'll admit it, and I'm not fully across that one. Another fact that I will endeavour to bring you as our coverage continues.
There are two fires there, Kissing Point Road, South Turramurra, and Canoon Road at South Turramurra. The latter being out of control still, an emergency warning there, and the Kissing Point Road fire under control. So it's a watch and act. So these are the fire that we're speaking about at the moment there at South Turramurra, and we're just trying to get a gauge of which one exactly that is, because obviously they're very, very close to each other.
They are indeed, and we have seen aircraft dropping fire retardant on that scrub, that bush I should say, there to douse the flames, although we can see that actually there are still some fires in that area. So the job isn't done yet, but that fire retardant also being dropped on nearby homes and cars. We also saw a horse float which was covered in the red retardant. This was what the RFS had feared would happen this afternoon as conditions deteriorated and the winds picked up. It is why the RFS declared that the Sydney Basin area was at a catastrophic fire risk rating. And indeed, there have been a few fires which have broken out in and around the Sydney area, but none really taking hold. I can see on the RFS app that there was one at Walleye Creek, there was another at Challura, there was one at DY, another at North Epping, Bella Vista, Blacktown, Gregory Hills, the list goes on. There's no doubt that RFS crews have had a really busy afternoon, but thankfully this one appears to be the worst of the ones in the Sydney Basin at the moment. And for a time there, it certainly did look as though that crews had perhaps almost extinguished it, Gemma.
Well, it's a warning that we got from the New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons in his last media briefing that as these winds pick up across the state, there is a very serious concern that it will whip up fire activity in a range of different places. The initial concern during that media briefing was on the Hunter Valley, but just some 5 minutes after Shane Fitzsimmons finished addressing the media, we were alerted to this fire which has sprung up at South Turramurra within the Sydney metropolitan area. It sprang up incredibly fast. It went from not existing to emergency level in the space of a few minutes, and resources were mobilised as quickly as possible to try to stop the spread of this fire and the risk it was posing to houses in that metropolitan suburban part of Sydney. Now, one of the questions you asked me last hour was why retardant was being used as opposed to water in this situation. I think there's two answers to that. One, we are in a drought, so water is scarce, but two, retardant actually helps control the spread of the fire. It stops it in its tracks rather than just putting it out. So not only is it attacking the fire itself, it's also coating trees, scrubland around that area as well, stopping that fire from being able to spread any further, particularly to homes and the like. So water bombers, or bombers in this case dropping retardant, were mobilised incredibly quickly to try to put an end to that fire, which, as I mentioned, sprung up incredibly quickly. More broadly, as this wind does pick up, there are concerns that there will be more fire activity right across the state. Shane Fitzsimmons making that warning a short time ago.
One of our reporters, Nick Dole, is there at Turramurra and can talk to us now in relation to this blaze. Nick, goodness, there's a lot of smoke around you. Just talk us through what's happening.
That's right, Kirsten. This blaze crept up pretty quickly. Some of the neighbours told me here in Canoon Road they saw some smoke, and before they knew it, the blaze was basically up against their backyard. There's a gully that sort of runs onto the back of some of these properties, and as you can probably see, some of the members of the Rural Fire Service are mopping up what's left of part of this blaze. I'll just show you over this way. Here are the homes, and they came under ember attack. That home you're looking at right there, we just spoke to the neighbour, and he says there are a number of spot fires that went through his yard. Fortunately, some of his neighbours managed to help him and put out some of the spotting, and the house has been saved, but incredibly close for many residents here in Canoon Road in South Turramurra. And there was another fire also in this area which was causing real problems. It was also an emergency level, but it has been downgraded. So some good news, but still a lot of work to do. You can see over there, fire is still inside, just trying to mop up embers, and dozens of crews here, not only from the Rural Fire Service, but from Fire and Rescue New South Wales as well. There'd probably be hundreds of homes along this street, and it's lucky that very few that we can see have suffered much ember attack.
Yeah, Nick, there was a bit of confusion with the fires because they're both South Turramurra, one being Kissing Point Road, one Canoon Road, and the difference being that one at emergency and one under control and down to a watch and act. So, I mean, have the firefighters been able to tell you, was one started by the other? Was it started by an ember attack?
It's too early to say at the moment. It's quite possible, but it's too hard to say. Certainly, what we did feel as soon as we arrived, I was up on the northern beaches probably about an hour ago. We came straight here, and here you could really feel the winds picking up. You might just be able to see in the sky there are some water bombing helicopters still doing work, and they have been so valuable to crews on the ground, just trying to build lines. At one point there are at least 3 in the sky, perhaps more. We'll just get off the road to get out of the road of this fire truck. But yeah, that aerial support has been a huge help for the fire crews on the ground. So fingers crossed they've got on top of this, and it really did come so close to these homes. Just as well, some people were here to fight that ember attack.
Nick, what did the residents tell you about the precautions they took ahead of today? There were plenty of warnings about how bad this day could be, and they live just across the road from the bush.
That's right. So, yeah, we've got the bush here, we've got these residents over here. They were ready for this kind of thing. As you can see, we've got all these buckets over here that people have been preparing. In fact, this gentleman over here, I think, actually did fight some of those ember attacks. You're live on the ABC. Can you tell us what it was like when the fire came through?
Well, it's just a big shock. It still is overwhelming. You don't think it's real, but it is, and it's in front of your face.
I suppose living so close to the bush on a day like this, was this something that you were predicting?
Well, they said it could happen, but you never think it would happen to you, actually. But it did, so.
You look really well prepared with these buckets and that kind of thing. I think you helped put out some spot fires in a mate's house. Tell us what happened.
Just in the neighbour's house, there was a little one in the front yard, and just around here they keep popping up again, so.
And it looks as though they've got on top of it, but the wind's still quite squally, aren't they?
From what you can see here, but there's a lot of bush back behind that we can't see, so.
Well, fingers crossed they're on top of it. Well done for your efforts this afternoon. Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah.
So there you go. Whoa, just had a spill just on some buckets.
Is the camera operator okay?
The camera operator is okay. It's just so many water buckets around here that people are so well prepared that unfortunately it was a slight obstacle. There it is. There's the offending bucket.
Did we spill any of the water?
Fine, I can assure you.
It looks pretty good.
I hope we didn't spill any.
No, there's still plenty of water here to put out any spot fires. So people have been really well prepared, and that has definitely saved people here on this street, and hopefully that's the end of it. But still so much smoke and still squally wind, so the threat isn't over. Actually, these fires keep sort of popping up, so I'll show you. There's a little patch of flame that's just popped up there. The fireys had got on top of that, but it's back. So it just shows that you can't be complacent at all, and so I think crews will be here all night to make sure that nothing flares up again.